Here I am, catering to your needs as well, despite your uninvited presence. A little gratitude wouldn't hurt, I muttered under my breath, trying to keep my composure. The water here is exquisite, isn't it? I remarked, trying to lighten the mood with a subtle compliment, though it felt futile in the midst of the tension. Here I am, sitting in this upscale establishment where I'm supposedly welcomed, left with nothing but a solitary glass of water, while the rest of the family indulges. My mother-in-law's cutting words sliced through the air once again, leaving me speechless. My name's Chloe. Fresh out of college, I dove headfirst into the corporate world, dedicating myself to sales ever since. Despite my achievements, my parents incessantly badger me about settling down. Succumbing to their persistent pleas, I reluctantly signed up for a matchmaking service at the age of 37. I married Ricky, who happens to be 5 years my junior, thinking it would ease my parents' worries. Little did I know, a sudden trial awaited us. Ricky's company folded amid an economic slump. Thankfully, between our combined incomes and my prudent savings, we managed to weather the storm. I encouraged Ricky to take on the role of homemaker temporarily until he secured another job. Admittedly, his domestic skills leave much to be desired, but having someone manage the household while I support us financially is a relief. Despite my extra effort and overtime to enhance sales materials and earn performance bonuses, months passed with no sign of Ricky's willingness to re-enter the workforce. When I suggested he consider part-time work, Ricky brushed it off, deeming it unsuitable for his future aspirations. As time wears on, Ricky grows increasingly agitated whenever I broach the subject of his job search. While he may appear unperturbed, still receiving unemployment benefits, his prolonged unemployment leaves me on edge. Eventually, Ricky begins to make demands for money, hinting that his savings from his bachelor days have evaporated. Though I never knew the extent of his savings, his post-marriage spending habits seemed extravagant. Whether it was splurging on home gym equipment or indulging in the latest video games, it's evident that he wasn't prudent with his finances. Now, with his unemployment benefits exhausted, the financial burden falls squarely on my shoulders. In exchange for Ricky handling household chores, I've taken on the responsibility of covering most expenses, from rent and utilities to groceries and daily essentials, solely from my paycheck. However, I'm stretched thin, unable to provide any more financial support. Despite this, Ricky argues, I don't have a single dollar to my name. Can't you throw in a bonus every now and then? Ricky's request pushes me to my limit, and I retort sharply, I don't have an allowance either, and I simply can't afford to give more. I understand the urgency of finding a full-time job, but even a part-time job would suffice for now. We can't continue like this. Our disputes over finances have become all too common, yet they always reach a standstill. Eventually, Ricky begins receiving financial assistance from his parents, further straining my relationship with them. During a visit to his parents, my mother-in-law lectures, a wife should quietly support her husband, earn more, and allow my son his freedom. Such comments only deepen the chasm between me and Ricky's parents. One evening, Ricky surprises me with plans to dine out. Excitedly, he reveals reservations at a prestigious local restaurant, rumored to be a hidden gem. He gleefully mentions that he's booked a table for 4, including his parents. With caution, I inquire about the affordability of such a lavish restaurant. Ricky's gaze shifts momentarily before he begins to explain. To my surprise, he reveals that he had quietly taken on a part-time job. It's a brief daytime shift, and after our past disagreements about full-time employment, he struggled to find the right moment to tell me. As a gesture of apology and reconciliation, he arranged the dinner reservation at a nice restaurant. Touched by his sincerity, I accept his invitation wholeheartedly. Although I harbor numerous questions about his workplace and position, Ricky reassures me that we'll discuss it over dinner, opting to keep the details vague for the time being. Despite the lingering curiosity, the cheerful topic succeeds in lifting the weight of tension between us, if only temporarily. However, the true purpose behind the dinner becomes clear days later in a cozy private room at the restaurant, and an unexpected surge of anger grips me as I realize the reality of the situation. From the moment we set foot inside, there's an unsettling aura emanating from the restaurant staff, signaling that something is amiss. They appeared slightly taken aback by our arrival, exchanging murmurs before my mother-in-law took charge and led the way. Despite any underlying tension, I maintained a polite smile and assured them that everything was all right, urging them to proceed to our designated room. Once inside, Seating arrangements were swiftly made, adhering to the family's customary positioning. I found myself, as usual, seated closest to the entrance. It seemed an unspoken tradition whether this meal was Ricky's attempt at reconciliation or not. Without protest, I took my place. As the first dish was presented, a subtle unease began to settle in the room. The waiter paused upon entering, a troubled expression flickering across his features. My mother-in-law, with an air of grace seldom seen, gestured towards my father-in-law, indicating his place first, followed by herself, then our son. "I can hardly wait to see what delights await us," I remarked, a sense of relief washing over me. The waiter proceeded to serve each dish in the designated order: father-in-law, mother-in-law, Ricky, and then began to explain each course in detail. It wasn't until they reached Ricky's plate that the realization struck. My meal had yet to be served. Gathering my resolve, I waited until the waiter had finished his explanations before speaking up. "Excuse me." My plate remained conspicuously empty as I sat there, staring at the glass of water placed before me, courtesy of my mother-in-law. Before I could voice my concern, the waiter attempted to intervene, his eyes widening with apparent discomfort. However, my mother-in-law swiftly intercepted, her laughter cutting through the air as she dismissed my predicament. "Oh, Flo, you never fail to astonish with your audacity. A daughter-in-law is but a stranger to the family. Is it not enough that you intrude upon our family dinner uninvited? Now you demand a meal? Water is more than adequate for a woman as impertinent and clueless as you. Besides, this is no ordinary water. It's from a prestigious establishment. You should consider it a privilege." While I had no qualms about abstaining from food to savor the flavors later, this treatment was beyond absurd. As my mother-in-law ushered the waiter towards the exit, she added insult to injury, instructing him to charge an exorbitant $1,000 for the water. "Consider it a steal for the opportunity to drink water in such opulent surroundings," she quipped. "Take your time. We won't be hurried." Rage surged within me, bubbling up from the depths of my being. Glancing at Ricky, I hoped for some form of support, but he remained indifferent, focused solely on his meal. My father-in-law mirrored this indifference, casually sipping his drink as though nothing had happened. It dawned on me that they had orchestrated this scenario from the outset, intending to leave me with the bill. I felt utterly defeated, realizing that Ricky's promise of treating me with his part-time earnings was merely a ploy to draw me into this humiliation. In my frustration, anger seemed futile. "Fine," I relented, my voice heavy with resignation. "I'll cover the cost of the water and depart. Enjoy your family time." With that, I exited the room to settle the bill, the echoes of their coarse laughter trailing behind me into the hallway. The attentive waiter noticed my departure and offered an alternative, mentioning that although the pre-ordered meal couldn't be served, other options were available. Grateful for his consideration, I declined, insisting on only paying for the water before making my swift exit. To my surprise, the waiter informed me that the water was complimentary. With a mixture of relief and indignation, I promptly left the restaurant behind. Witnessing Ricky's behavior today was the final confirmation I needed to proceed with divorce proceedings. His prolonged unemployment, coupled with a lack of effort in job hunting, had strained our relationship to its breaking point. Instead of taking responsibility, he chose to conspire with his parents, shifting the blame onto me when the financial reality hit home. Today's ordeal of humiliation and harassment was the ultimate betrayal, extinguishing any lingering affection I had for him. It was clear that I could no longer endure this marriage. Upon returning home, I wasted no time in packing my belongings, determined to leave behind any remnants of my life with Ricky. Our once shared space now felt suffocating, overrun by his hobbies and possessions. As I reflected on our situation, I realized that my personal belongings were minimal, having prioritized saving since Ricky's business downfall cast a shadow over our finances. With a sense of purpose, I loved my trusty suitcase from my college days, filled it with essentials, and set off for the hotel where I would spend the night, a temporary refuge as I embarked on my journey towards a fresh start. The following morning brought a newfound sense of vigor as I indulged in a hearty hotel breakfast before heading off to work. It had been an eternity since I'd relished such a meal. Typically, my breakfast consisted of nothing more than a plain slice of toast, devoid of jam or butter, due to my tight financial constraints. I marveled at the recent improvements in hotel services, appreciating the small luxuries amidst my mundane routine. En route to work, I made a brief stop at the city office to collect divorce papers from the after-hours window. Though only my portion had been filled out, an unexpected wave of optimism washed over me. With the decision to divorce now made, it became apparent that I had endured far more unhappiness in this marriage than I had initially realized. Upon arriving at the office and immersing myself in work, I couldn't help but notice a disturbance emanating from the neighboring department. As the claimer drew nearer, gradually encroaching upon our own workspace, I exchanged curious glances with a colleague seated beside me. Before long, the disruption reached our department, accompanied by a familiar voice calling out my name. "Hey Chloe, come out here. You can't just disappear because you didn't come home. Mom and Dad are willing to forgive you if you return and apologize." My heart raced as I stood up, utterly flabbergasted to see Ricky and my in-laws standing at the entrance of my office. Their hostile expressions only intensified upon locking eyes with me, and they wasted no time in making a beeline towards me. My mother-in-law thrust a receipt from the previous night's dinner into my hands. "I explicitly instructed you to pay $1,000 for that water, didn't I? You, the wife of my son, have orchestrated this deceit." Their accusations pierced through the air, disregarding the attention drawn from my colleagues. Ricky and my mother-in-law continued their tirade, their voices echoing through the office, while my father-in-law adopted his customary innocent bystander demeanor, just as he had the day before. The audacity of their actions left me speechless. It was incomprehensible that they would go to such lengths, even taking time off to confront me in my workplace. Yet no matter how forcefully they pushed, I remained resolute. "If I'm deemed a stranger to your family, then why should I be held accountable for the meal?" I retorted, my voice firm. "I refuse to tolerate this harassment in my workplace. Should you persist in causing disruption, I will not hesitate to involve the authorities." A sudden sense of dread washed over me as I realized Ricky's intentions. Without warning, he seized a computer monitor from a nearby desk, his actions fueling my apprehension. Witnessing this escalation, my mother-in-law seized a nearby phone and declared, "We'll demonstrate the consequences of defying us," before violently slamming it onto the floor. The deafening crash reverberated through the room, triggering screams and pandemonium among the female staff, plunging the office into chaos. As panic ensued, my mother-in-law and Ricky, their faces flushed with anger, began hurling objects indiscriminately. Amidst the chaos, my father-in-law finally spoke, his tone laced with a strange detachment. "If only Chloe had complied and paid as instructed, none of this would have transpired," he remarked apologetically, addressing the room. "Please accept our apologies for the inconvenience. Chloe will take care of the cleanup." His attempt at humor fell flat, his nonchalant demeanor contrasting starkly with the mayhem unfolding before us. Gradually, people began to distance themselves from him, wary of any interaction. Feeling a surge of urgency, I knew I had to intervene. Amidst the chaos, I raised my voice, imploring Ricky and his cohorts to cease their destructive rampage. Yet, attempting to reason with individuals consumed by rage felt akin to conversing with an impenetrable barrier. Frantically, I reached out to grab Ricky's arm in a bid to make him listen, but before I could even make contact, the situation took a dramatic turn. Suddenly, the room was flooded with the presence of police officers, their arrival signaling a swift end to the turmoil. It appeared that someone from the adjacent department had alerted the authorities upon witnessing the mayhem unfold. Ricky's accusatory glare pierced through the chaos, his enraged voice cutting through the cacophony. "You called the cops," he bellowed before launching a punch towards me. In an instant, 3 officers swiftly intervened, swiftly restraining him and bringing him to the ground. It was a scene straight out of a television drama as they proceeded to arrest him on the spot for assault. Later that day, a surreal convergence occurred at the police station, where the company's CEO, myself, and Ricky's parents found ourselves gathered. The company promptly filed a report detailing the property damage incurred during the chaos. Seeking legal counsel regarding the harassment and tumultuous events, I faced the challenge of substantiating certain claims, particularly regarding the incidents at the restaurant and Ricky's financial negligence. After deliberation with my lawyer, it became apparent that pursuing legal action would be arduous and uncertain. Hence, the decision was made to pursue a settlement. Negotiations became complex once Ricky secured legal representation, but eventually we reached an agreement for a divorce devoid of asset division, coupled with compensation for the emotional distress inflicted by Ricky's workplace violence. Meanwhile, the assault case concluded swiftly, culminating in compensation for the injuries I sustained within 2 months. Regarding the damages incurred by the company, all legal battle seemed futile and potentially detrimental due to the risk of negative publicity. Thus, the company opted for an out-of-court settlement, prioritizing damage control over monetary gain, ultimately agreeing to a substantial settlement sum in lieu of legal action. In the aftermath, Ricky emerged as the sole individual burdened with a criminal record, while he and his parents found themselves saddled with a substantial debt owed to both me and the company. Struggling to fulfill their financial obligations, they resorted to tapping into their retirement funds, leaving them financially destitute. In a last-ditch effort to salvage Ricky's prospects, his parents orchestrated his return home and utilized their connections to secure him a position at another company. However, this newfound opportunity proved short-lived. Unbeknownst to them, Ricky's new employer maintained business ties with my company. Upon learning of Ricky's tumultuous history, exacerbated by rumors circulating about his volatile behavior, the company's CEO swiftly took action to protect their reputation, prompting Ricky to resign from his position. With little recourse, Ricky retreated back to his family abode, abandoning his latest employment endeavor. As word of his criminal past began to circulate within the neighborhood, it eventually reached the workplace of my in-laws, further tarnishing their reputation. Now not only associated with harassment, they found themselves branded as individuals harboring a dangerous and destructive individual who had invaded their daughter-in-law's workplace. As the story spread from colleagues to higher-ups, the repercussions were swift and severe. Both of my in-laws were terminated from their positions despite being on the cusp of retirement. Facing the grim reality of unemployment, they sought legal assistance in a bid to rectify the situation. Conversely, I opted to forgo further legal action, realizing that I no longer needed additional reports and recognizing the futility of hastening into marriage. Fortunately, the pressure from my parents to tie the knot has ceased. It's possible they harbor a sense of remorse over the incident, as they've refrained from broaching the subject altogether. While I empathize with my parents' predicament, I can't help but feel relieved by the newfound freedom from matrimonial expectations. Instead, I've redirected my focus towards making amends and contributing positively to the company I inadvertently troubled. Immersed in new projects, I find myself experiencing the most fulfilling days of my life, embracing this newfound sense of purpose and fulfillment.